Signs that Meghan has been sassy to the Queen from day one. A gloomy future is foretold. A photo of the fake Duchess with Her Late Majesty reveals a serious error that set the former actress's royal career off to a rocky start. I've got to admit, I've always kind of wondered what it must be like to walk out onto the Buckingham Palace balcony. Is it electric? Is it nerve-wracking? Is it awe-inspiring? Is it moving? Well, it's probably a mix of all the above. Certainly, the most iconic image of the royal family out there is of them gathered together on the balcony, wearing some beautiful clothing and some really nice hats, and putting on their typical, very modest display of feeling while greeting so many people gathered below. 5 years ago now, I can't believe it's been that long, but anyway, 5 years ago, there was one woman who made quite a leap from being a mostly unknown actress and blogger to full-blown HRH, logging not one but two such balcony appearances in only a month. And in 2018, on the 10th of July, this woman, of course we're talking about Meghan Markle, stepped out onto that balcony for the fly past to mark the centenary of the Royal Air Force. It was her second such appearance in only a month after her balcony debut for Trooping the Color. Recently, something hit me about this moment. If you look at the photos of that RAF event, you can see if something unusual jumps out at you. I'm gonna wait. Did you see it? Standing right next to Her Late Majesty is none other than Meghan Markle. What we need to think about here is that positioning on this balcony is not some haphazard kind of situation. It is all carefully orchestrated. For much of recent history, when the House of Windsor decides to go out there on that balcony and greet the masses, where they stand is mostly dictated by seniority. And that's why standing closest to the monarch in the past usually was the now King Charles and Queen Camilla, as well as William and Catherine, the Prince and Princess of Wales, and their children. Back in the good old days, the late Queen's adored Harry sometimes also got a really good position. And that's why it is so significant that Meghan stood right next to Her Late Majesty. So I think that requires us to really consider, looking at those images of the late Queen and Meghan, we need to think about what was going on behind the scenes around that time. That's a time when Meghan and Harry still seemed like the monarchy's #1 shining hope for the future. Now, reportedly, back then, there was a lot of trying happening. One thing that a few experienced royal journalists and biographers have talked about is that back in those early days of Meghan and Harry, when the future seemed so incredibly bright, the firm was really trying hard. And what were they trying? Well, they were trying to make it work for Meghan Markle. She had been fast-tracked from Toronto single girl living to palace balcony waving in only about 7 months. Now, required reading for anybody who's really interested in this topic is Valentine Lowe's book, Courtiers. He says that perhaps people tried harder to help Meghan than she has acknowledged. Valentine Lowe reports that before they got married, Miguel Head, then William's private secretary and therefore the top courtier in Kensington Palace, had, quote, told her that the palace would do everything they could to help. She was joining the royal family with a wholly different experience of life, but there was no need to think that she had to take on her new role in a particular way. She didn't have to be straitjacketed. One source explained to Lowe the entire place, because of everything about her, and because of what Harry's previous girlfriends had been through, was bending over backwards to make sure that every option was open. Now, in 2021, there was a former royal aide who spoke with the Times royal editor Roy Anika, saying, "The family have tried to be welcoming. All the staff and principals have genuinely tried to be kind." And another palace source reported everyone bent over backwards to accommodate her. The Queen gave them the opportunity to go wherever they pleased. They were given a degree of latitude, according to the royal biographer Andrew Morton. He also said they did say to Meghan, "If you don't want to embrace royal duties full-time, please be our guest and continue your acting career." Those opportunities were open to her. But now we're getting to the tricky part, because what exactly was all this trying for? The late Queen tried to do her part. She sent over some of her most senior courtiers, like Lord Chamberlain Earl Peel, to help Meghan figure out how the firm really worked. He said, "I liked her, actually. She was very forthright, very, very polite." And then Samantha Cohen, Her Late Majesty's former assistant private secretary, also tried to help. Now, actually, at the time, Ms. Cohen had resigned, but the late Queen convinced her to stay on to help Meghan and Harry navigate the advent of their joint career. In his 2022 biography, Revenge, Tom Bower also said that Under Cohen, a team of 14 young, intelligent, and experienced officials, including Jason Knopf, was assembled to introduce Meghan sensitively to the quirks and expectations of royal life and service to the nation. And actually, that wasn't all. Her late Majesty also sent over her Ghanaian-born equerry, Lieutenant Colonel Nana Kofi Tumasi Ankara, and the veteran lady-in-waiting Lady Susan Hesse over to Kensington Palace to try to help Meghan figure things out. There apparently was a whole lot of trying. But maybe it wasn't the right kind of trying. Maybe the late queen had the best of intentions, but was posting a bunch of firm insiders over to explain things to Meghan what was really necessary at the time. Earl Peel was probably very good at explaining to Meghan what the gold and silver stick actually does. I mean, sure, that was stuff that was good to know, but was that what she really needed at the time, considering the shock that she had to have been experiencing? And what about Lieutenant Colonel Tumasi Ankara? Well, he had lived in the UK since he was 3 years old, according to the Times, and he also went to a very good university in the UK. He ended up enrolling at Royal Military College Sandhurst before he was commissioned into the Blues and Royals, and he also served in Afghanistan. He was actually the first man of color to be commissioned into that regiment, and he was the first regal equerry of color too. But the one thing that connected Lieutenant Colonel Tumasi Ankara and Meghan was that they were both people of color. So what exactly was he supposed to do? Warn her about which visiting ancient dukes were probably going to make some racially insensitive jokes? Point out the specific palace corridors that are lined with oil paintings glorifying colonial conquest? And then there's Lady Susan. Now back then, she was almost 80 years old, and she had spent more than 5 decades in the royal household. Now, she could certainly teach Meghan about which fork to use, but considering Lady Susan's brief period of recent exile, after repeatedly questioning a black royal reception attendee about where she was really from, does anybody out there believe these conversations were useful? Since then, Meghan has made claims against the firm of institutional bias in Meghan and Harry's Oprah Winfrey interview, and the palace has started publishing diversity statistics. In late June, the latest numbers revealed that only 9.7% of their 517 full-time staff members were from ethnic minority groups. That is below the 10% goal that in the past they have set. Meghan was trying to learn all about an institution that predates the printing press by centuries, and she had to have been dealing with an extreme sense of dislocation. Where was the person dispatched who could help her with how she had to have held trading a pretty normal existence to live in the surreal and very privileged world of royalty? I think back then, the palace saw Meghan and Harry as basically a lottery ticket. They were a couple of charismatic, made-for-Instagram working members of the royal family, and they looked like they could sell the idea of a hereditary monarchy to the newest generation. If they had been successful, it would have been a real testament to the mutability and the adaptability of the House of Windsor, and this Duchess, Meghan Markle, who did look pretty good on the front cover of a magazine. So the point I'm trying to make is that when it comes to the institution of the monarchy, I'm sure they wanted Meghan to be successful. They wanted things to work out for the best. But I worry that maybe they didn't know the best way to make that happen, and their trying really only went so far. Now, please, don't think that I'm saying that Meghan Markle is blameless in this situation and that somehow the royal family is at fault for everything that's happened. That is not what I'm saying at all. But at the same time, where things really fell apart was failing to understand that maybe Meghan was going to need more than a couple of elderly titled types and one important courtier of color sent around to have a little chat with her. Looking at the photos of Meghan standing right by Her late Majesty back in 2018, the thought that pops into my head is this. While the royal family may have tried their best, I worry that they didn't try hard enough or that they didn't try in the right way. Maybe part of the problem is they didn't understand how to help her. Considering that showing up on the balcony is now restricted to working HRHs, we're probably never going to see Meghan up there again, and maybe that's for the best. And maybe the more important takeaway here is this. Maybe it didn't have to turn out like this.
And don't be afraid to click the subscribe button to get more updates in the future. Thank you so much for tuning in, have a lovely weekend, and we'll be back to see you all tomorrow.